Since everyone knows that the farmer is the backbone of this nation, what we're trying to do is all we ask is to halt the press's feeding frenzy and to get him off these mean streets and onto a level playing field so that there's some chance of stopping the violence and heal the rift that's splitting us apart and bring us all together in peace and love. While man is the only creature to have become civilized, he is also the sole one to undergo revolution. Would all of you beasties out there at the edge of the campfire like to play Go Figure? The guy snarled, "I'm with the mob, and you've got exactly 30 seconds to talk." So the man told him everything he knew, and when he was through asked, "But why is the mob after me?" And the guy replied, "The mob's after everybody." Later, when he was alone, the man wondered if there was a metaphorical message in what the guy had said. Life assured local conditions. Don't worry, things are going quite nicely. And conditions replied, "You know, from this angle, it's hard to tell." And is that not, boys and girls, if you're at an angle, always the case? A certain village lad considered entering the priesthood, but after studying its public operations, thought to himself, "Why should I make sheep and cows feel less human than they do already?" Then struck out alone to the fields and meadows to do what he could on his own. The smithy in one man's mind paused to reflect. Only wimps beat on themselves with such flimsiness as guilt and remorse. A real man would use the cutting steel of a sword, the unrelenting impact of his own new reality. Heroes. Yep, that's right. Yet another attempt to let someone else be enthusiastic for you. In one sense, the mystical are even simpler than the routinely simple, in that they have life narrowed down to but one serious thing. And lo and behold, a real thing at that. Telling what kind of guy you are, a brief essay. Those who don't know who they are continually identifying themselves. And a man with his name sewed in his shorts snorts, "I knew that." The first revolution taught man, why use your back if you can get a machine to do it for you? And now the second one whispers, why use your mind on such back-breaking chores if you can mechanically punch up the answers? As always, life deals man a solid hand, but there is also always an empty table just across the room and a brand new game to be played. A poem. Living's exertion, thinking a joy. If this don't be your case, you're still a cow. Or a sheep. Or a fish, or a rock. Gambling was once a simple affair till someone thought up the concept of the infinite raising of bets. When people do things they later regret and want to look back and call their actions idiocy, it just shows that they still don't know what's going on around here. The parade, its cadence, timetable, and ETR. The civilized stay on schedule. The less so fall behind. Say, who's that up there ahead of us? You cannot see the extraordinary until you see how ordinary everything is. Those more conscious are conscious of a greater reality. While all sail, only the lost insist on directions. You do realize that through the above, I am again indirectly pointing to what a non-routine mind must do to ever get anywhere. Certain aspects of civilization, a one-sentence essay. Life will let pass almost anything that calms man, but that which excites him had better watch out. A neural warrior's only hero is his own future consciousness. One day, local conditions, temporarily exasperated, told one man, take a number and get in line. And it worked so well, it soon told everyone. On One World, during the summer vacation season, the responsibilities normally handled by the firm of Law and Order are taken over by the team of Sequence and Sequence, with the same results. Although civilization will sleep with almost anybody, it's still no pushover. Thought processes not based on improvisation do not meet basic transcendental standards. Life barked out, everyone, back in your cells. And one man said, but I didn't know I was a prisoner. No. And life had a really good laugh. The mystical is pro-life, and the only example of such a position that is totally unconditional. A mystical history, a histical mythery. This kind of stuff was originally called this kind of stuff. Then it got changed to the mythical, then to the mystical, then to the occult, then to religion, then back to the occult, then to philosophy, then to psychology, then to New Age, then back to psychology, then to New Age psychology, and by God, a few still yearn for at least a return to its first name, or better yet, a jump forward to a place where names are not necessary. A priest from another universe landed here, stood before a magnificent temple, and wondered, what the hell did they build this for? On Earth, words are stronger than mortar. On Earth, the human mind is the earth. Myth. Once, everyone was excited. Most calmed down, a few didn't. Continuing what we were talking about last time, having to do with two levels, the primary physical survival level and the excitement, the enthusiasm necessary there, and the neural level, that which is unique with man. Do be aware, when we talk about creativity, the basis of creativity is sex energy. Now, once you're a man, once you're civilized and verbal, there is more to it. But sex energy is creativity. That is the basis of it. If you had had him neutered, Vincent would have never painted Starry Nights. Or if you had had George Spade, she would have never written Silas Marner. That is I guess that was worth a small bit of humor. But that was what I was referring to just through examples when I was mentioning that the greatest burst of dream time of the future, of what someone's going to do artistically, professionally, creatively in their later life, peaks at the same time sexual energy peaks and declines a tempo or a pace with the decline of sex energy. But don't look away and think that there's something beyond or something metaphorical to the point that you're missing the original. Human creativity equates with sex energy. I even made up a little examples of if you had neutered Van Gogh, he would have never painted Starry Nights or Sunflowers. The creativity would be gone. That is at the basis of it. That is at the basis of everything that passes for any creativity or originality. That has no real significance to someone attempting to do anything extraordinary. It just simply is. To try and take that and to think that in some way you could use that, which people have tried, as you may have read, but to believe in some way that you could redirect that. Well, for one thing, by the time you had any understanding of it, you'd be past your peak years sexually anyway. And so to try to redirect it would be as though you now had an engine that started out running, let's say, on 8 cylinders, and now it's irreversibly down to 6 or to 4. And you go back and think, well, I was going in the wrong direction back when it was running good. Now I'll redirect it. Even, you understand, even if you could do it, you're down to a 4-cylinder engine, it just will not work. And even if you could do it at the time, it would accomplish little because it is mechanical, which is one reason, although you can enjoy the art and music of everybody on this planet or anybody you like, that it is actually misdirected for you to be impressed by that which is done through sexual energy. That is to think that there's more to it than there was, because a Mozart, in a sense, can't help it. He did not sit around and decide, well, I'll be a child prodigy. He didn't decide, well, I will write music or whatever field it was, that you want to pick out another example, that they in any way had a conscious part in it, even an intentional part. Music broke out in Mozart the same way his face did. Whereas most 14-year-olds just simply had pimples, he had pimples and sonatas came out. But do understand that is the basis. There is no separation. You cannot separate sex energy from all of the so-called creative arts or everything that seems to be some form of creativity that's been on this planet. You have to dismiss that. It is simply as mechanical as your heart beating, except it's on a collective scale. Then go into the neural level. We're now past just the sexual energy. Into the neural level is where man, as it's generally put, is where he does begin to uniquely exercise a singular form of creativity. In that other animals, although they have sexual energy, they do not paint, they do not compose or write fiction or poetry. And so this is given the greater, from a civilized view, from the front of the parade, this is given a greater degree of import. But people are operating at the absolute minimal level at any particular time, creatively. This kind of stuff is the ultimate form of creativity. And as you know, I'm not referring to you and I and us standing here, but this sort of activity, the so-called mystical, the great secret work, the background of religion, all of the great mystical, mythical, underground efforts to expand one's consciousness and understanding, etc. This is the form at the neural level. This is the exemplary. It's really the only one worthy of the name, but this is the ultimate form of creativity. But also in another particular way. It is creative in this sense that a real mystic creates his own world. Now, if you can compare this, when other people write about, when people dream about, that is the core of the energy that drives humanity, when it seeps out into people and they write and theorize about some kind of mystical work or some kind of mystical effort possible, it is always on the basis, not that they're misdirected, they're just incorrect, they're just childish, but it's always on the basis that there is some information to be discovered. You can even describe me continuing to use the word for the time being mystical, and it being, even by the dictionary's party line, the belief that it is possible to attain information or insight that is transcendental to, that is beyond that which is ordinarily available. That still sounds as though we're talking about the insider knowledge that there is actually something to be discovered. classic example being that there is a secret, and that you even talking about being more conscious, or mysticism, it sounds correct to say, well, the whole point of being more conscious, to be more awake, to be part of the Buddhahood, to be blown away in your consciousness into a more direct connection to the creative Godhead, center force of the universe, is to know what's going on. In other words, it sounds as though we're talking about some goods rather than services, that there is a secret that you can say, well, the whole point of trying to do such as this is to find out what's going on. The purpose of life, as it's normally put. So it sounds as though there is a something, and I can make it sound that way, that there is a reality. There's a point-blank, nonpartisan, unaligned, non-subjective reality behind all of this, which is nothing new to describe it that way. And so that sounds as though we're talking about some sort of facade, some sort of Hollywood front here that passes for reality, perhaps due to our low level of consciousness, but behind that is something to be discovered, a secret, another world. But something is actually beyond our ordinary intellectual or conscious vision to be discovered. May I present it to you another way? That it's not really that. It's not discovering something. It is an act of creation. That every time a real mystic hits this planet, whether you ever hear about him, he says anything or not, or whether he said anything you didn't hear it, as opposed to him having discovered something, he created something. Or I can make it sound less highfalutin. He didn't discover a secret. He made up a secret. He didn't discover the reality. He didn't discover the essence of reality. He made up his own brand new reality. Having said that and regretted it, that's known as humorous relief. To take the tension off and to keep your beard from growing so fast. We could take that from any ordinary view, in case you hadn't already done it, and just tear that to absolute shreds, make that sound as though we're on the verge of talking about outright classifiable psychosis. To say, well, in that case, if I was an ordinary mind, I could say, well, in that case, this whole idea of some sort of transcendental experience or mysticism is worse than I used to suspect. I always thought it was a bunch of fruitcake sitting around anyway, trying to talk to the dead and read tea leaves and all that occult New Age crap. But boy, you put it right, if that's true, you put it right in our face. That's just insane. Because that fits any clinical definition of psychosis in general. Did you hear what you just said? Yes. Say it again. Well, a real mystic, somebody who was superior consciousness. I'll make it worse. I mean, if they're going to fool around me, I'll rub it. A man, a mystical, a transcendental, a man with superior, expanded consciousness has not discovered something new or something that's been hidden. He's made up a whole new something. He hasn't discovered the essence or the reality behind this sham reality. He's made up a new reality. He hasn't discovered the secret of this world. He's invented he's created his whole own fresh world. And then the ordinary person will go, well, that's what I thought you said. But you do hear what I'm saying. That would, from any ordinary view, fit any definition of insanity. But, now press this along a bit further. Pick out anyone, and I could take this ordinary person and say, well, pick out what do you consider to be, or who do you consider to be some superior minds in whatever field outside of technology. Let's get somewhere that's having to do with the human condition internally. Pick out anybody you want to. Philosophers, religious thinkers, poets. Pick out anybody you want to, and what would be considered perhaps their masterpiece, some of the ideas that seem to be the great ideas of the world. Pick those out and let make up your own example right quick. So he picks out somebody. And I say, all right, now if you're smart enough to do that and you're smart enough to hear that what I said met the definition of insanity, then you're also smart enough, we'll assume, intelligent enough that you can put yourself back into the historical era of whatever figure you picked out. Socrates, Plato, Moses, Muhammad, Buddha. And so at that time, in fact even now, but at least at that time, do you realize that what he said was so far removed from reality that it was almost a whole new reality? All right, love thine enemies. How about you going to go back to that one? The idea then, to take that kind of position, even though it's still here, but the idea then, the prevailing, the decent attitude in that specific part of the world, let's use Jesus again, was an eye for an eye, retribution. It was the law, it was the moral law, it was the religious law, it was the judicial law, it was the custom, it was reality. It simply was, and to many people it still is. You don't have to stretch your genetic memory that much. The bars and pickup trucks right now of the world are full of people that is reality. This guy says, they say, we hear you made some kind of new discovery. You got out there and hung out in the woods and been sucking on that weird bark or doing something, chanting, and I heard that you know some weird stuff. Have you discovered the secret of life? Is there something extraordinary we don't know here in town? And he says, okay, I'll tell you something. Love those that hate you. That, and you should be able to feel it now, that was insanity. All right, we can put it closer to what I was saying. That was a whole new reality. They didn't have to accept it. It wasn't that everyone obviously went, wow, how great. Not based upon what unpleasantness that seemed to have occurred to the poor man. Maybe not just due to that one idea, but it was not that suddenly everyone fell to the ground and went, hey, we've had the wrong idea of reality. Contraire, the prevailing view of reality still is with people, in people's minds, not just the law, but in people's consciousness throughout this planet. Reality, even though they may know that their law says, in most of the civilized world now, you're not supposed to take retribution into your own hands. But the consciousness of most people on this planet is still, if somebody killed their kid, it could be the head of the philosophy department at Harvard. I'm pushing it because I know they get pretty wimpy. But you understand, civilized, decent people that would not think of picking up a gun, if somebody kidnaps their child and kills them, the person's attitude, whether they will do it themselves or not, is retribution. They will put up rewards, they will show up in court, and they may be somewhat hesitant to be interviewed by some TV show and say, well, I'll be down there when they fry the son of a bitch, and laughing. The more civilized you are, the more you don't do that. They'll just say things like, well, I'm glad to see that justice prevailed. But what they're saying is, I'm glad that the state, I don't have to do it, but I'm glad we're going to kill that son of a bitch. That is still reality. Tell me you hadn't lost the place. So I was trying to make it sort of shocking and upsetting when I was pointing out that a transcendental view or a mystic does not discover a secret. What he does is he invents a whole new reality. He personally invents a whole new one. He creates it. I mean, the idea that you can look at as fine a work and as hobby as it can be of a painting, a statue, and to say, now this is creativity, or to listen to a symphony, or listen to Elmore play guitar, or Julian Bean, according to your taste, or Jim Bean, but he had to give it up. The finest works of creativity, do you understand, just take it verbally, pale next to creating your own reality. Because whatever they created will fit in yours or not. You can say, no, I don't have art in my... The point is, no matter how great the composing, the writing, the sculpting, the painting, the architecture, no matter how creative it seems, no matter how original it seems, no matter how beautiful, it doesn't come close to a guy that can just walk up and go, well, putting it crudely, and just create his whole reality. That is creativity. The rest of it, you got to admit, that's children. That's child's play. That's pussyfooting around. Like, well, I'll create a statue. A statue. I mean, it's fine, but we're talking about a statue on one planet, in one galaxy, in one universe. And a real mystic, he just simply creates his own universe, his own world, his own galaxy, his own reality. But now back to where I said I hope you didn't get lost already. To try and make a kind of juxtaposition enough to shape things that you might see it in a way that I understand it's not that easy, just running along sequentially with words, is me taking the position of an ordinary mind saying, well, to invent your own reality, if you're serious, if you're even somewhere one step beyond metaphor, that is insanity. Except when you look at the way I was playing my game of talking to this man, such as using Jesus, or I could have used Socrates, I could use the Greek philosophers, if you don't want religion, the whole idea of know thyself. The unexamined life is not worth living. Your life. Because then I could take the position, I could change it and say, well, instead of religion, up until then, in that part of the world, the Grecian world, reality was what happened from without. All the powers were from without, and up until then they studied. The only thing that seemed important up until then was, what are the gods doing? You know, who's Zeus sleeping with now? Who did he make mad? The queen of the oceans? One of the lesser muses of the clouds? Is it going, you know, did he make him mad? Did he sleep with the cloud goddesses, the rain god's wife? And we're going to have a drought? The whole thing that whatever happened to man was you looked without. I'm just making this up. I mean, it fits. Because when you can create reality, everything fits. But anyway, so then you could say, whoever first came along, let's just attribute it to Socrates, but anyway, let's say that he was the first one that went, somebody came to him the same way as Jesus, and then they said, everybody says you're a wise man. I traveled here from afar. What do you have wise to say? They say that you know things that are just striking. And Socrates says, well, the only thing that makes a man's life worth living, a man, an individual man's life worth living, is for him to know something about his own life himself. That was a new reality. That was Jesus saying, okay, instead of retribution, instead of hating people that hate you, which is the reality, he said, don't hate them. What? In fact, love them. Crazy, insane. But it is indeed just simply another reality. Anything less than that, I was trying to get you to see, is, relatively speaking, compared to what you can do, is a lesser form of creativity that you could see, with no offense meant to them, but you could see all forms of the arts, all forms of creativity and originality as being faux mysticism, weak attempts at mysticism, which is always, for those of you who would like to take a quick note, amongst artists of all stripes, of any reputation, if they ever said anything that was remembered besides their painting or their art, all of them expressed some streak of interest, some belief that they were involved in something strange. It oftentimes will only come out like this, that they'll say, well, I can't explain how I learned how to paint like this. I went and studied with so-and-so. My father apprenticed me over to this painter down in Venice when I was 10 years old, and I was there 2 days, and he threw me out. And so I can't explain how it happened now. I don't know, it's like the gods gave me this gift. All artists feel something. It is that they are, as I was saying before, they are being driven, the ordinary artist, closer to the sexual energy, which is the basis of creativity. You got to understand that. That is nothing, you don't get any more creative than keeping the race going. There's nothing in a basic sense more creative than you and a woman if you're a man. But anyway, for a woman, you look down, you think, well, I'll be damned. And there's a little nipper, another human. Now that's creativity. And you hold up a little nipper, even if you're not a great family person, you hold it up next to even a Michelangelo. little statuette of a cherubim, and you look, and the little nipper, you got to admit, that's really superior. That's a little something additional to that statue. No offense, Mick. That's a great work you're doing. But that is creativity. Another human. It's alive. But when you go past that level, when you get into the neural level of man, past that basic, primary survival level, then creativity, what normally passes for that, is very close, is inseparable from sexual energy. That's why my joke about if you had neutered Gauguin, he would not have painted. See, I blew it now. I can't think of one. Should have stuck with Van Gogh. Tahitian Girl at Rest. Try that. See, by the time you go check whether you paint one like that, I'll be out of here. In other words, you cannot separate the mechanical flow of the sexual energy that keeps humans alive collectively. You cannot separate that from ordinary creativity. Nor can you really separate mysticism or anything else. But now what I want you to see, what I was trying to point at, is that which normally passes for creativity is always directly, and once you see it, it's just there. Nobody has to prove it. I don't have to hector to you about it. You simply see that is sexual energy at work. That's what this statue is. That is why a picture of Mary holding Jesus, this crushed body, if you look, it is sensual. No offense to them, to all you good Catholics, and all you good dead people. And you look at statues of Buddha, even though it's, I guess his shape, his way he's depicted is somewhat removed from our more svelte idea of beauty now. But this big old fat guy with no clothes on, or a stout guy sitting there smiling with his leg crossed, it is sensual. All good art has a certain kind of sensuality in the, and I'm not beating around the bush, I mean that you can feel that is sex energy. That if that guy was deprived, or that woman, whoever it was that wrote or composed this, you can just simply see it. I'll tell you the truth, you can feel it. But anyway, you can see it. You understand that if we move back in time and this person had been neutered, spayed, fixed, if they had been sand sex energy, they could not have painted that. They could have painted that same picture and you looked at it and it was like lifeless, as the critics like to say. Has the mechanical technique down, but no soul, no art to it. What they're saying is it does not have enough creativity. They go, yeah. And they're also saying it does not have enough sex energy. When you get past that ordinary level, is a working definition of this kind of stuff, always has been, is that you have a Buddha, an Abraham, a Zoroaster, a Confucius, anybody of that ilk. And they're past the point, and I don't mean past in any judgmental sense, but they are not satisfied. They are at the front of the parade of where man at that time was going neurally, creatively. And they looked around the same way as all of you did to some degree. They went out and checked what the prevailing religion was, which is checking, in most times, what would appear to be or should be the primary cache of or manifestation of creativity, enthusiasm, that which seems to be driving humanity at that place to be more civilized, which is sort of a low-level form of creativity. They find that the answer is not there. They find that it is nothing but incestuous cannibalism. They find it is nothing but people repeating the same things. They find that the priests of their time do not know anything. That's why they have scripture. That's why they have somebody they must quote. Then they find out the artists don't know anything. They get past perhaps the priest of the time and they go look up the artist, somebody who has been writing a chant he likes. And he thinks, well, that music, the rhythm, some of the nonsensical words and stuff. Anyway, I would be real mystic like many of you did. once he starts kind of narrowing it down, once he finds out religion doesn't have it, then he starts thinking, well, wait a minute, the arts have it, music has it. And then he goes checks, well, who wrote this music? And they say, well, I learned it from so-and-so, the old man down at the end of the village. So he runs down there and he said, where'd you get it? And he went, well, it's my great-grandfather taught me. So he goes and finds him. He said, where'd you get it? In his dying breath, he goes, I learned it from my brother. In other words, there is no creativity. You can't get all upset by it. But you have to run through like a whole menu of what would appear to be the founts, the sources of creativity. Arts, religion, all the manifestations of their local civilization to whatever degree they appear to be civilized at the time. A Buddha, a Confucius, all of these people then were left to have to turn to themselves for the ultimate act of creation. Now, it's normally called such things as, well, they decided, and up until now, we could use what I just described in the last 2 minutes as being a fair introduction to, if I was here presenting a lecture on the history of mysticism throughout the world, the history of so-called mysticism, anything like that. I could set it up and then bring out the names of the Buddhas and the Muhammads and Jesuses and et cetera, and say, now here's what they did. They looked around at what was going on and decided it was outdated. And you would have theologians, you would have philosophers, you would have historians right now of just ordinary attitude would go, oh, yeah, I can accept that. That's what everything has been. It's kind of an attempt to reform, to improve, to bring new life. Did you say that's what Jesus was trying to do to Judaism? You say that's what Judaism was trying to do to the pagan beliefs of the Middle East at the time. You can say that's what Buddha was attempting to do to Hinduism. You can say that's what Hinduism did to the pagan beliefs of their area. It keeps seeming like, I was pointing out, that it would appear to be that all of these things are an attempted reform movement. And you get ordinary people go, oh, yeah, that's true. That ain't true. That's to wrap up. Kids are going out in kindergarten for playtime. You take their little peanut butter sandwich and you put stuff like that in, and you say, now you go on out. Be safe. Don't hang from trees. That's not it. I put it to you better. I submit to you better. The Buddhas and et cetera, they realize that reality, may I invite you to listen? They realized that reality was out of date. Not the religion. They found that out real quick. Not the morality. They learned that just almost immediately. Not that the arts, oh, they knew that. But see, at the ordinary level, it always seems as though it is some sort of sequential improvement. The realists in painting were still in the stronghold in the turn of this century, or the last part of the last century. In Europe came the Impressionist painters. They were stoned, laughed at. That's, what the hell is that? You can't paint a flower? A Monet or somebody said, well, sure, Pisario says, I can paint a flower, but, Jesus, they painted flowers now for 2,000 years. What do you want? Look at this. They go, doesn't look right. It looks like a flower. It looks like you need glasses. The flower is not even, he says, Philistines. But then it wasn't long, and the Impressionists became what? Old hat. So it appears to be a sequential movement, a continual improvement, a series, a non-ending series of creative reform movements. Except a real mystic looks around, and it's not that things need reforming. I grant you the history because most of you have already relived it in your own life, that you look around and you think, well, something's wrong with religion because they don't know, they seem to have the answer. Something's wrong with psychology. Something's wrong with the arts. And you just keep looking and you don't find it. You then, a real mystic, is past the point of reform. So because as long as you're dealing with the reformer, you think that you're in some way critical out here. You got to realize you're still dancing with the tar baby. You could say, well, I want to reform this. These are my people. A Buddha could have said, well, the Vedic scriptures, there's some neat stuff in there. But boy, we have gotten so tied down with ritualistic behavior, and now people are beginning to take some of these old stories literally. I feel for these. These are my people, my friends, my family. They can do better than this. I'll go out there and I'll, kind of slap them around and say, come on, folks. We got to get the right attitude toward this. We got to straighten it out. There's much wisdom here, much that would help us. Now, you can say that. And I'm sure that there's some historians of acceptable reputation that have said that. But that is not what a Buddha, using him archetypally, did. At least it was not in his mind, I assure you. He didn't reform. He didn't straighten it out. He did not improve upon. He did not put the spirit back into reality at the time. He created a new reality. Anything less than that is not mysticism. Consider. People will pay to hear, people will pay for, let me call it routine mysticism. Partisan religious ideas. Just one example. There are all kinds of examples. Any kind of collective, indefinite, it's a collective always, but indefinite speak. There's a new term. That was one term, hyphenated. But that is partisan religion. That's normal religion. That is normal political ideas. People will pay for that kind of, let's just lump it all, mysticism. That which seems to be, purports to be, the purchasers may accept it to be, extraordinary thinking. They will pay for routine mysticism because routine mysticism always has a partisan slant to it. That is, if it says it's mystical, and it's what I'm calling routine, or if it says it is transcendental, and I'm still calling it routine, it will be the very thing that I said of mystics such as Buddha did not do. It will simply be a reaction to reality as it is. Okay, try it this way. What I mean by routine mysticism, you'd go find now someone who says, all right, Buddhism originally had this secret. There's no doubt the greatest mind, he was the most awake, the most conscious. Nobody's even come close. Forget anybody between here and there. They just rehashing him. Anyway, but what's happened out here, it's become, I don't know. It just fell into so many hands. It's been so far back that he lived. And after 2,500 years, it's got shop worn and people misquoted him and all kinds of things. But thank God I'm here to straighten it out. And you could perhaps, as happens very often, it's why every religion has reform movement. And after it goes long enough, they have neo-reform movement. And then it goes long enough, and somebody says, well, we reformed too much, then they have return to orthodoxy movement. And then that's not enough, and it becomes conservative return to orthodoxy. You can get people to pay for, that is, give attention to, an apparent reform, an apparent rekindling, a straightening out, a correcting of some previous mystical system. That is routine mysticism. You can always get some sort of audience for that. And those of you listening intently, you do know we're not talking about somebody standing in one place and getting an audience. We're talking about, although that happens, it's just your own mind, if you don't watch it, will follow that same line of cadence, tempo, direction, and ETR. You don't spell arrival with an R. Hello? So that was, when you hear this sound, we will momentarily discontinue regular programming to see if you recognize an emergency when you hear one or not. See, it was a fake emergency. The only thing that would really qualify, based upon the reality I'm laying out for you, the only thing that would qualify as real mysticism, as real transcendental thought, as real expanded consciousness, all of the many terms is to be more awake, to be more conscious, to be more mindful, to be in direct contact with the Godhead, to be back in union with the creative moment of the universe. All of that, but no, and none of that is possible unless we're talking about a person who is inventing, who is creating their own reality. Because it is not something that you can take reality as it is. See, now I was just using examples like Buddhism. Reality around you now, whatever it is, you cannot take that and reform it. That's what ordinary people do. That's why you have the pushing and shoving in the parade. That's what it's about. People saying, somebody says, walk faster. He might as well be saying to the guy in front of him, Buddhism, something's happened, get out of the way, come on. And he may stop for a moment or try and go, who agrees with me? The Buddhists are getting fat and they're collecting too much money. Yeah, let's throw the socialists out of government. What we need are Christian Democrats, Jewish Republicans, Italian. People go, yeah, and there's all this pushing and shoving. The parade keeps going, but internally there's all these pushing around and shoving, walking backwards and sideways and tripping, somebody picking you up, somebody throwing you down. You cannot reform. You cannot repair reality. Well, unless you're ordinary, and if you're ordinary, that's all you're going to do. That passes for creativity. But until you can get above, or to quote that illustrious thinker, myself, it says that you cannot see the extraordinary until you realize how ordinary things are. You cannot see extraordinary things until you recognize that everything's ordinary. That is, you cannot see above the parade until you look around at the parade and realize this is nothing but a street-level parade. You can look this way, you can look that. Anyway, you've got to see that life is ordinary. There is nothing extraordinary going on. There is nothing extraordinarily wonderful. There's nothing extraordinarily untoward. It's a damn parade. You were born into it. You'll die in the middle of it. It does not stop. It is going forward. It is not going backwards. If your line of sight, if your consciousness cannot get above crowd level, which is street level, as I say sometimes, for those of you that wonder what the hell I mean, that you're there in the city, you're in the middle of the parade, you can be a critic, you can be a reformer, you can be orthodox, you can be conservative. You can be reform, you can be a royalist, you can be a publican, you can be anything you want to be, but at street level, you've got no idea what's going on, and you cannot be creative past the primary survival level. You can screw in the parade and drop children. That's it. Which is creative, but beyond that, there's nothing else creative save this. It's what I mean. He's not refining the parade. You first got to get your sight above the parade. And of course, one of the tricks, if you want to follow this picturization, is kids, you can hold them up and they can look over and see who's going to hold you up. It's bad to leave on a sad note. If that makes you sad, you're not going anywhere anyway. If you cannot get above crowd level, you have no idea what's going on. None. I can describe it allegorically in all sorts of ways. You're just an ordinary person. You can be a president, you can be a billionaire, you can be rich, you can be famous, you can be artistic, you can be poor, you can be short, male or female, but you will never have any idea what this is about. You'll just won't have any idea what's going on. You'll have plenty of things to worry about, you'll have people to push at, and you'll have people to try to get out of their way that's pushing on you, and you can imagine you're being creative, but the creativity is always some sort of pushing and shoving inside the parade at that level. That is what creativity is no, I'm not a realistic painter. I'm an impressionist. Somebody says, I am an expressionist. None of this is creativity. It is all relative. In the parade it is, because the parade itself is moving. So what people understand, and you're in the midst of it, is the strange one I pulled on you last time, that it's not individuals, even in history, that were creative. And yet it's the individuals that stand out. See, you're born like on a ship. And just because the ship gets out of a storm and one day finally comes into sunshine, people go, I invented sunshine. You have me to thank. That's what I meant. But the parade moves along and it turns to the left or to the right or whatever. And you go, well,
and somebody says, a few people around you. Could be a few, could be 1,000, it doesn't matter. 1,000,000. And if you go, he's told us that one day, you can fall on your knees and, sing Hosanna and say, oh, our great leader. The parade turned. The parade painted Starry Night. The parade, wrote Silas Marner. But life has to Vincent van Gogh. He grabs somebody and says, all right, you change your name to George Sand. And she went, that's a man's name. And life said, hey, who's running this show? That is not creativity. And that's never intended to be a criticism of the rest of life. What I'm trying to get you to see is there is no real fooling around. You can talk about fooling around. But if you're not creating your own reality, you're not a mystic. And it's not insanity. And it's not psychosis. Contraire. It's people dealing with the parade and taking it for real if you want psychiatry turned inside out and pressed and straightened out, which nobody does, especially psychiatry. If you do, that is psychosis. That is insanity. It's taking life as it is to be real, to be what it is. That's insane. I shouldn't say things like that because I could get some reasonably sane psychiatrists. If I talked real fast and had them in a comfortable position, would hear that and go, you know what, you're right. Then they'd have to go, snap out of it. But that's insane, is to take life. Oh, there was no joke. Anybody who doesn't think they're insane is obviously crazy. That was a joke back when psychiatry was in its heyday in the Western world, in its salad days. That was one of the jokes is, if you don't think you need a psychiatrist, you're crazy. That's obvious. People will not pay, back to where one place was, people will not pay to hear real mysticism. The routine kind, you understand, they will pay to hear. They will pay to hear religion, they'll pay to hear political speeches, they'll pay to hear new economic theories, but they'll pay to hear all forms of New Age, occult, mystical, but it's all of a routine nature. That is, it is always in some way a reform. It is always a reaction to some other form. As you go up and if it just says, the secret revealed here, tonight, $15. And you want the ticket off and you say, is that really true? Yes. It's a guy here that knows the secret of life. And you go, well, can you give me some sort of hint? Well, I'll pay a ticket, but Jesus, it's 5 hours. That's really exciting. What is it? And you might say, well, what are you involved with now? And you might say, well, I've been practicing Zen there for a while. And so that's interesting because he will mention everything from Zen to the Quakers. He'll mention all that, but if I remember him correctly, this is a guy in the box office, it's one thing with Zen, here's what he's done. He has taken it closer to how the Western mind thinks and has removed some of the barnacles, is the way he puts it, I believe, that it's picked up through the years of practice and it being transposed from the east to there. And you go, because Zen always interested you, always thought you were close, and you went, So the thing is, we're ready to pay and to hear this. If it's what you thought was yours already on some course, or it could be a little more some other way, like, well, I spent 20 years in a monastery, 20 years studying Zen, and it just doesn't work. It sounded great. I was absolutely convinced right up until the last day of the last month of the last 20th year I spent there. And so you're saying that he says that's not it. No, he says it's not. That all of these are like the superficial ripples on top of the real pond of understanding. And you go, damn, I should have known it. You go, here, give me a ticket. Give me a ticket, I'll go hear it. Well, you understand there is some sequence. It makes some sense that somebody is going to take what, and I'm talking about now people who believe that they're actually interested in such as this, real would-be routine mystics. You've got to have somewhere that you start off standing. You go, well, what is the secret? If the guy says, I'll be here tonight for $15, and you go, well, what is it? And he says, well, what are you interested in? What have you tried? And you say Zen, Buddhism, anything. You go, yeah, I know all about it. And so, well, show up here, I'll talk in a little while. And he's going to say, but you're telling me that I didn't actually waste all my time or there was something missing. You'll be here in just a little while, and I'll specifically mention Zen. I was going to anyway, but now that I know you're interested, I'll point out what was lacking. That sounds like something. That is not mysticism. Well, that's not what the real hungry mystics want. Those that are actually, you got to do it yourself, but those that are just absolutely just tired of, not satisfied, or tramping in the parade. That is not mysticism. That will not make one more conscious. That will draw out one's life, might give you something to do, which brings up another old joke for those of you that, I don't bring it in to be funny, I bring it in because it is unbelievably pertinent. As a guy says that his doctor told him that if he'd quit drinking and smoking and running around with women, he'd live longer. And the guy says, well, have you? And he said, well, sure seems like it. So believing that you're interested in mysticism and you follow whatever is going on, whatever's available, it doesn't matter what. And it seems as though, well, you keep getting closer. You know, you'll bounce off one criticism, you'll bounce off Zen into Reformed Zen, then that even bounced you back to a more pure, unanalytical telling of the Vedic scriptures to begin with. But then that sort of bounced you forward into something else. And it's like, well, I'm getting closer, I'm narrowing it down. Well, did it make you live longer? No, you know, kind of gave me something to do, kept me from going crazy. There's only one form of creativity at the mystical level. That is why it is the form of creativity. It is incomparable, because a real mystic doesn't reform things. I mean, even up here, he didn't look around and translate what's going on. He doesn't go, well, they're all mistaken. That was a myth, that was metaphorical. All that's true, but that's not what it's about. Well, that's just a warm-up. That's doing stretching exercises before you go to run. I mean, it may take you 20 years, but it's still exercise, because real mysticism, real understanding is not straightening out. I mean, just up here, whether you say it or not. I don't mean actually going out and become a reformer. But it is not a figuring out, it is not a seeing behind what's going on now. It is not a reinterpretation of it. It is not an allegorical understanding of what's going on out there. Nay, nay, nay. A real mystic creates a whole new personal reality. And I will agree at the end, it meets every decent Western definition or English definition of insanity. I'll admit it. So what? Of course, there's a built-in safeguard there, because if somebody had listened, well, you slipped up and told the truth. All that proves is that they're insane, or they wouldn't have heard it. Yes, it sounds like it's almost the same thing, insanity and being more conscious. And they go, I thought so. All they did was they looked down their shorts, and instead of it said more conscious, it went insane, and they went, I knew that.